your LinkedIn profile. Before we start officially, I'd like to have a moment of silence. So we're just going to take a couple seconds here. Okay. Quick introduction for me. My name is Josie Burton. I'm a current senior at Earlham, about to graduate next week. My major is management information technology, and kind of the motivation for hopping on this team for starting this workshop was to provide accessibility for students going through some difficult times right now with opportunities, and just offering some things that I would appreciate as well going through the process. If everyone wants to just kind of introduce real quick.
Sure, I'm Danielle Rose. I'm class of 95. I have a degree in religion. And I say that because I work for Microsoft. I'm a sales director for Desert Mountain. I do, since we are using the Microsoft Teams account, I do need to let you know that we are recording. So for your privacy, please be aware that this is being recorded, but its use is only for students of Earlham College.
I'm Peggy Osborne. I am a career counselor and a 78 graduate from Earlham. I'm one of the original organizers of this. And I'd like to present Erica Steffer, who is one of our fabulous Earlham graduates too, who's also an expert on LinkedIn, because she spends many hours on it a day from what I can tell.
So yeah, are we doing a go round of other people on the call, or just should I get started?
I think we could go ahead and get started because
Okay.
people are popping in and we've got quite a big number, which is awesome.
Okay, that's great. So I'm Erica Steffer, and I am a class of 88 grad. I specialize in executive recruitment, and I work for a firm called Egon Zehnder, which is it's the largest privately held search firm globally. So we have about 2,000 staff around the world. And I'm working on LinkedIn all day, every day, looking at people's profiles. So that's what brought me to the meeting today, to share a little bit of my experience with that and some tips for you along the journey. So here's the agenda for today, which is to give you a little sense about LinkedIn, why your LinkedIn profile is important, what LinkedIn profiles contain, some tips for a great profile, and then leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end, as well as provide you some resources that you can look at in greater depth. So first of all, how many this is a chat function, so send it into Josie, if you will. How many people do you think are using LinkedIn around the world? And how many people do you think are using it in the United States? So while you're thinking about that and typing in your answers, I will tell you that 95% of recruiters are using LinkedIn. So anybody who's looking for a job, they want to be on LinkedIn. So you've got 675 million users in 200 countries and territories. About a quarter of those are in the US, and 83 million of them are making hiring decisions. This is also representative of about a quarter of millennials and over 50% of US college graduates. So this is a very large resource for people to connect.
We had a 500 million guess, so that was pretty close.
Very good, very good. So why a LinkedIn profile is so important is about, well, over 60% of jobs are found through networking. So a large percentage of jobs they're not advertised. They're not out there anywhere. And so if you're not networking, if you're not talking with people, connecting with people, then you miss out on opportunities. Sometimes it's a matter of a role not even existing until someone knows that you could do it for them and they create the role for you. And sometimes it's a matter of putting feelers out to people that you know when you're in job search mode and hearing about things. And usually that's not even the people in your most immediate network. That's usually people that are circles out from your immediate network. And I know people think about networking sometimes as a dirty word, but my friend Tim Cork, he has a way of talking about networking as net giving. And I think net giving is a really important concept in an Earlham environment because, we know that Earlhamites are there to change the world in really wonderful ways. And so maybe networking doesn't sound great, but net giving, I think, is a generous way of looking at things. So your LinkedIn profile is going to represent you in the talent marketplace. It's going to help people find, follow, and connect with you. It enables you to share your professional expertise and insights. And it increases your impact in your fields of interest simply because people can find you and you can post things on LinkedIn so that they know what you're capable of doing. So this goes to some of the sort of elements related to job search in particular, but over 70% of jobs aren't advertised. A lot of people, their resumes are rejected before they even get seen by a hiring manager. A large number of people get rejected because of their social media profiles. So, and many people will not get interviewed face-to-face. It's probably less than 5% that will get a face-to-face interview. So for all of those reasons, having an impactful LinkedIn profile is important in your job search process. And even beyond the job search process, just in terms of connecting with people to work on projects and non-hiring related decisions. So we know that Earlhamites are changing the world. In so many different ways. And one way that you can use LinkedIn is to connect with other Earlhamites, right? So that would be a warm network that you would have immediately out of the gate. People know that you've gone to Earlham. They're going to have an understanding of your background. We're going to have another talk in a few weeks' time about how to leverage LinkedIn. But this is a good way to get ready for that because your profile will be ready for reaching out to people. So what do LinkedIn profiles contain? So you've got the photo, the intro, about yourself, your background and experience. So first off, you want to be selecting a professional and friendly photo for your target industry level and role. So a big thank you here to Ebony for participating by sharing her profile with us. So maybe just as you look at Ebony's picture and as you're kind of thinking about this, what do you notice in the chat function? Maybe pop this into Josie. What do you notice about Ebony's photo? Like her background or kind of what she's wearing, how she's looking. Anything coming in, Josie?
I just realized I was muted. We've got clean, simple, and happy, neutral background plain, so the focus is her.
Exactly. And so, and an open neckline, which also signifies an openness, right? So the next thing, and when I asked my colleagues, I said, what are your pet peeves about LinkedIn profiles? And to a person, 10 people, I asked them, 10 people, to a person, the first thing they said was the photo, because so many people have an inappropriate photo. So it's really important. Next thing is you're using a headline. This is to speak to your audience. It tells a bit about your expertise. So if you look at Ebony's, international, business-minded professional, skilled and creative problem-solving, editing, research, and advertising design. So you look at that, and then everything else that follows after that should substantiate that. Now, the advertising design, you get that right off the top because she has her own special logo. She's got some nice color scheme at the top. So all of that kind of reinforces, and you think, oh, I want to read more, right? She's friendly and she's got this, nice, attractive logo at the top. I want to read more. Also, she's customized her URL. So instead of the one that comes with LinkedIn that has a bunch of numbers at the end, she's stripped that out and it's just down to her name. So that's a nice thing to be able to put on your resume, on if you decide to have business cards, if you want to embed it in a cover letter, whatever. It just makes it very simple to have it just your name as much as possible. And then you want to craft a short targeted summary about your skills, qualifications, and interests. There's a resource here that can give you some good ideas on that. And if we look over at what Ebony's done, she's got a nice short paragraph about her expertise, and she follows it up with her 5 key strengths, which she's also reinforced at the top in her logo. So you look at that and it's reinforcing the messaging that she's giving about herself and her background. And then she goes into her experience and, very crisply puts in, with the active verb to start each of her bullet points, what she's been doing. So if we go over to next profile, we've got Josie's profile, and this is just some segments of Josie's profile, just to feature a few things that I think some of you may want to keep in mind. So with Josie's profile, what she's got in here, because she's doing a lot of UX work, she's embedded in some videos that tell you about what she's worked on, her projects. She's also got embedded in there the websites that she's worked on. So for any of you who are working on particular documentation or publications or videography or any kind of work that can be easily clicked on and reproduced, this is a great opportunity to demonstrate that with a few key things embedded in your profile. You can do that either in the featured section at the top or throughout the profile for each of your work histories or internship or volunteer experiences. So another thing to think about is that many recruiters will only be looking for your current role. So in the search functionality that recruiters have, we can cross-cut in a variety of different ways, and we can search by current and past, not current, current and past, all of those things. So that they don't get overwhelmed by just a tidal wave of people, many recruiters will just limit it to the current role. And so for people in job search mode, one thing that they can do so that they're not missed is to put the title of what they're looking for in their current title, and then put, seeking a new opportunity as the company name. It's a way of kind of circumventing the limitations of LinkedIn there. So that's something to think about. The other thing I would say for those of you who are in job search mode or just thinking about more broadly as you're entering a particular area, look at keywords that are in job descriptions or profiles of people that are working in your field, just to see that you're using the language that will be useful in and impactful in getting on the radar screens of people that are making those hiring decisions. Wherever possible, quantify your accomplishments, give a sense of the scale and scope and complexity of the things that you've worked on. And really importantly, to keep in mind, the more comprehensive your profile, the more likely you are to be found by recruiters, because you'll have more keywords for them to find, and especially keeping all of the sections of the profile in mind. So you want to make sure you have a photo and fill out as many sections as possible, and that will enable you to be found more readily. So then beyond those, beyond the initial expertise that we see with Ebony's, and then going into the actual work histories that we see with Josies, then towards the bottom of each profile, you've got things like skills. So just kind of backing up a stage here, in the featured and activity things, this is where you can put some of your articles or things that you've been posting. People will see the activity that you've had. Then there's a skills and endorsement section. So this is where you can, feature what you're known for. People will endorse you. And then your accomplishments. This is a place where you can put things like languages, publications that you've had, any special projects. For those inventors of you out there, you can put your patents, anything like that that's in a special accomplishment, you can put into that section there. In terms of recommendations, you can ask for recommendations. There's a link to click on and to ask for that from people in your network. You want to make sure that you're being thoughtful about who you're asking for those recommendations, so that they can actually speak credibly and thoughtfully about your experience. You can go back to them if they've said something that you'd like them to elaborate on or change. You can always go back. They can be edited, and you don't have to use them. So, you don't want to be asking for a cast of thousands of recommendations, but if there are a handful of people that can speak to your expertise, it's another opportunity to demonstrate it. Same thing, if you want to endorse other people or recommend other people, it can be a way to kind of tit for tat, if you will, to offer that and then receive that back from other people.
So Erica, I've got a question here. This is from Peggy, but I think it's really relevant. That the question was, I'm going to change my headline next week to from the word student to graduate, correct? And I think a follow-up to that would be how often you change your headline, or how quickly do you change it, and kind of speak to that if you could.
Yeah, so for a headline, really it should encapsulate kind of who you are as a professional. So the default in LinkedIn is to your current title and your current company. So that's the default. If you don't have something, it will default to that and put it in. So my default for a long time was, I don't know, financial services practice, Egon Zender, right? So it just defaulted to that. And then, but you can edit it and change it so that it is more representative. With that in mind, you may want to change it specific to a job search, because you might want to tailor and use particular keywords for that job search. And then once you're done that, you have a new role. Maybe you're doing something in a new area, so you may change it there. You might live with the same headline for quite a while. Does that answer your question?
I think that's pretty good. There also was the question from Serena that how do we make it just our name and the web address, and Peggy answered with under your profile picture, you click on personalize your URL. So I just wanted to get that out there for everyone.
Yeah, basically every place that, if you look on each section, there's a little place to edit things, right? In your profile, you can edit them. When you click on the little pencil, it just allows you to edit. So some tips for great profiles. Be creative. The main thing is you want to convey what makes you unique. So you want to be authentic. And in that, use your own voice. So use the first person. This is not something that should be in third person, right? It should be about you, writing about you. In fact, when we were talking about pet peeves, when I polled my colleagues today, they're like, I can't stand it when people use third person, right? So this is your chance to really express yourself. But you also want to make sure that you're doing this in a concise way. So just take out anything that's not necessary. And make sure that your messaging is consistent. So from the top to the bottom, everything should be kind of reinforcing the same message all the way through. My pet peeves are, I mentioned earlier, headshots. So photos that are inappropriate to the career in question, and there can be some variance, right? So I work in financial services. Most people I see, they're going to have something that's in a suit, or, guys are going to be in a jacket and tie. My friend who works in tech, people are a little looser in what they wear. So there's a spectrum, right? So my image, my photo is going to be in a suit and a blouse, whereas she's in a black turtleneck, because we have different markets, right? But both of those are appropriate for our, we both have a neutral background and we both are smiling, and so we're both approachable. It's just different styles for our audiences. A big thing that we all discuss is how we don't like it when people are cropped out. So get someone to take your photo, just you, not an old photo with you and your person or dog or anything, just you. If you're in a science field, this is an opportunity to, put yourself maybe in the lab, or if you're a geologist, it's a chance to put yourself outside in nature, but professional. It needs to be professional in the setting that you would be working in. Think about your style. Get somebody else to read it. So somebody else will see things that you've missed. We get close to our own products, and so we miss spelling mistakes, and we might miss something where it's not the same structure. All the bullets are past tense of an active verb except one, and your friend will pick it out for you. Also think about making sure that there isn't too much information, and that, so it's a fine balance between something that's not enough, or it's imprecise, or it seems unsubstantiated. You want to make sure that whoever is reading this can answer the question, hey, what do I get if I hire this person? Because fundamentally, that's what it's about. What do I get when I hire this person? What will this person contribute to my team, to my organization? LinkedIn has a lot of fabulous resources for students, so definitely check that out. I'm coming at it from looking at people who are midway through their careers, but they have a lot of fantastic resources there that are directly oriented to the student market. And then lastly, I've put in a few resources here, some on LinkedIn, recruiting and job search statistics, a little bit on net giving, my friend Tim Cork's book there, as well as some things about networking not being a dirty word. And then a little bit for those of you who are interested in executive search as a career path and on leadership. And I've just put a few things in here about Egon Zehnder. So I think that wraps up my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So I've got a question from Grace that says, what do you recommend, Erica, that we put as our industry if we're not yet in a specific industry?
That's a very good question. What are you inclined to do?
It's hard to type it all out, so I'll just quickly say over voice if that's okay. I just wasn't sure for if we don't know what career we're going into yet. I mean, I know what career I'm going into probably, but for people who aren't sure yet, who are still trying to embrace the liberal arts education that we're in and don't know what industry we're going into. I don't know. Do we have to put an industry? Or do we just put what we're going towards?
I think it's helpful to put what you're going towards. And look, I was a French major. If you'd asked me up until graduation what I was planning to do, I wanted to be a bum in Europe, right? So I was the worst person to ask about what I was going to do when I was done, and I didn't have a clue. So I get it. But I think the more precise you are in what it is you're looking for, the more able other people are to help you in getting there. So even if you're not, like, even if you aren't entirely sure, there may be certain things that you're looking for. If not, it might be certain qualities in an organization. It might be certain purpose or mandate of the organization. So there may be things that are maybe not industry specific, but might help people get a sense of what you're looking for. And those are things you could put at the top in your headline. And they're things that you could put in your about section as well, so that you can frame kind of where your experience is and where you think you might fit best. Peggy, do you have other ideas on that? You're kind of working in and around this field as well. What do you think?
Again, I'm not a person that would put a specific industry necessarily. I would put the skills that I have that I want to use, kind of like Ebony's headline. It doesn't say there exactly what she wants to do or where she wants to apply that. And I know she's applied it in different ways, in different, organizations and I guess you'd call it all education, possibly.
Yeah.
But so again, I'd say, think about the strengths or if there's a job title that you're interested in, that cuts across organizations. But I don't think you really need a specific industry unless, again, you're targeting that area.
Yeah.
Erica, I just have a follow-up question because I know that as a student, I've wondered this as well. How, we define the generalities of what we should include if we're interested in multiple things, but what's some good verbs to use if we're putting that as our headline, like searching, looking, open to opportunities? What's the difference between a headline and say like an active verb under your major?
You mean in terms of the actual job search process, or you mean research as an actual field of employment?
Just for example, if we're wanting to keep opportunities open as a student and we're stating what we're interested in or where we want to go, do we say in our headline that we're looking for a position in blank, or is it just depending on the place we're in and looking for a job, or as just studying to kind of get more knowledge on the subject?
So my inclination, and I'd love to hear other people's viewpoints on this, my inclination would be that the headline is your career, is your kind of summary, right, of your skill sets and what you're looking to do. And in your first role, you can have a role that says, whatever the role is that you're targeting. And then underneath that, instead of having an actual company, seeking new opportunity, right? Because then that means that you're going to come up on a search criteria as that kind of title will pop up in a recruiter's search functionality. So if you're saying, I want to be, I don't know, a UX designer, right? So your title is UX designer, and then underneath it, it says seeking new opportunity, right? Whereas the headline is going to be something about, you know, creative, UX designer, and then all the things that are related to that in the headline.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So our next question from Kutsai, which I think is really good, is there's been a lot of talk on LinkedIn about being consistent with posting. What is your recommendation on the content we should post, and how consistent should we be with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really what you're doing is you're kind of curating how you want people to see you, right? Professionally. So just like you would curate, for example, I know it's an ancient thing, but maybe your parents would curate their Facebook. You probably curate your Instagram or, you know, other social media presence, right? But it's the same thing here, right? So you're thinking about professionally, what are the messages that I want people to see that I'm posting, right? So in my case, like I work in executive recruitment. So a lot of what I post on my LinkedIn is about executives. It's about, you know, there was a survey of CEOs and how they're responding to the pandemic, and what are first-time CEOs doing? You know, they just got this job 3 months ago and now they're landed in the soup of a pandemic. How are they dealing with it? Or things on, you know, I do a lot of work in financial services, so things that are related to that, or things on leadership. So the things that I post professionally tend to be around leadership, human resources, people, maybe things on trends in, you know, boards. So what's happening with boards? Okay, there's a trend towards more environmental and social responsibility. So articles on that. For me, that's the consistency of messaging. So I think for, you know, anybody who wants to be employed in a certain area, the more consistent you can be, then your network gets that, oh yeah, that's what you're interested in. That's what you're posting about, right? It is consistent. And the same thing if you're writing, especially, or you're doing your own creative material, that also will help people get an understanding of you as a professional.
So Ebony has a question to follow up that, which is, does posting more often allow you to have more visibility to recruiters? And I think another way of another kind of add-on to that is, does posting act as like a search engine optimization would for Google? Like, does posting more allow you to pop up sooner or resonate with keywords better when you're searching as a recruiter, Erica?
That is an excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. Danny, Peggy, do you know the answer?
I would venture to say no. How we use posting is very much like what Erica's saying, is that you're trying to provide value, and there is a feed that like the people that are in my network, I don't know how many people now, that I try to follow and see what is of interest to them because they're clients or they're partners, or but if we go out and we search for candidates, it's a different process, and that posting is not necessarily going to get you picked up more from a search. However, back to Erica's point, it's really going to build your brand within a network. And so the beautiful thing about it is if you post something and I like it, even if let's say you're the only shared contact, everybody in my network that's following me is going to see that I liked your material, and it's going to bring more people to your profile to look. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's yeah.
Thanks.
And I would also say that during the COVID, usually the posts are having more empathy and more, I would almost say it's in recognition of the time that we're living in with work from home, etc. A million years ago, I never would have posted my two Frenchie puppies, but it's the reality that I'm in. They're my air quote coworkers, right? And so I'm posting and trying to build empathy to say, this is my current reality in my office. What's yours? Trying to get people to engage and talk about that as well. So the normal rules are a little looser than they would be otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Danny.
Okay, we've got a question from Serena. If you're interested in multiple different types of jobs across different fields, should you only focus your LinkedIn towards one direction or the other, and or both? Like, what do you recommend, Erica, with that?
So it is actually possible to have more than one LinkedIn profile. So that I mentioned that. I mean, it's not that I'm recommending that, but I'm saying that you can do that. It could be potentially confusing to someone if they were radically different. But that's one option, is to have separate ones. My own inclination is to try as much as possible to represent a holistic perspective in the one profile. And if somebody has more than one interest, then I think it's possible to talk about that in the about section. I'd have to know more about how diverse the areas were, but I think it's possible to represent that in both the headline and the about section. And that can also enable someone to kind of weave a sense of consistency, especially if the work history represents more than one kind of experience that might be relevant, let's say, to those 2 or 3 different areas. Does that make sense?
I think that sounds good. I also know that Serena said yes, thank you. I also know that Earlham students do have a more holistic perspective and tend to. And I don't know, maybe Erica, if you could speak on like how to leverage that or utilize our focus on communication skills that's pretty much campus wide, and kind of the well-roundedness that is accompanied by that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always the possibility for, show, don't tell. So when it comes to communication skills, if there are particular publications or web pages or things that are content specific or videos of you presenting. So anything that demonstrates your communication skills that you can embed in there, that's one thing. And then the other piece is to emphasize that in the way in which you describe what you've done and the kind of impact that you've had. As far as the holistic piece, I think it's trying to represent that in both the bullet points and your summaries will help you do that. But this is, I think, where your networking comes in, because people who know you or who know Earlham already will be warmer contacts for you in your job search process. And you won't have to spend the same time kind of explaining what Earlham's all about, because they'll know that, right? So in terms of networking with alumni, networking with people that are familiar with this context could be very helpful for you.
I have a question from Caroline. As someone who doesn't currently have a LinkedIn, how much of it is about the profile versus the posting? And another maybe follow up to that is, how do you prioritize what to do first and what to continue to prioritize moving forward, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's the profile first. So work on the profile, don't worry about the posting. That's short, in a short and sweet way. Just work on getting a good professional looking photo and putting together, you've probably worked on a resume. So some of what you've got from working on your resume, you can use the same text, putting it into LinkedIn. You don't have to have the same length of stuff in LinkedIn as you do in your resume. And the nice thing about LinkedIn is that it allows you to show a slightly different side than you can do just in a formal resume.
Well, and in terms of posting too, you can post your own stuff, certainly. I'm not someone who likes to do that in the career field. I feel like people just post the same thing over and over again. But I do follow people, and I have people I know who really post really good and interesting things. So I repost theirs a lot. But any of those get you kind of notoriety if it's good, particularly. But I also just object to people just posting for the fact of posting. So make it relevant, which I'm sure Earlham students are good at. That's one of my pet peeves.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
We don't have any right now, but guys, feel free to enter them into the chat. Peggy did say on the communication part that she's seen very few job listings that don't require communication skills. So that's a good thing to know, especially for Earlham students, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And I think and I would just add to that, that communication skills and relationship management skills become increasingly important the more senior someone becomes in an organization, because when they enter into leadership roles, the technical skills that got them there, it's not that they're no longer applicable, but they needed those to advance. But at a certain point, it's their ability to lead teams, to communicate, to build relationships with their clients, and all of those are part of an Earlham toolkit. So which is why I know when I was a student, there was this study done, and it was, at least the first couple of years for Earlham graduates, especially people who didn't just go straight on to graduate school, it was a bit tough, right? It was hard to kind of find a way forward and get one's feet and all of that. But jump forward 5 to 7 years when people have found what their niche is and where they're working. At that point, the Earlham skill set is really beneficial, because it's all about, being able to communicate and relate to people, and all of those skills will be very helpful in the long run.
Awesome. Derek has a question. Is this the final Q&A session? I think, Derek, were you referring to, is this the final part of this series? Or did you have a question to ask relevant to LinkedIn? I'm gonna give him a second to answer that, and I'll go to Ebony's question, okay, which is what do you think about friends offering recommendations for your profile? What about professors?
Yeah, I think the key for a recommendation is, can this person speak to my skill set and what I can contribute meaningfully related to professional experience? So in other words, if I've sat on a committee with someone and we've spent hours and hours and hours together working on a particular project, then they can probably speak to how well I work in a team. A professor might be able to speak to, my level of intellectual agility or problem solving expertise in a way that maybe one of my friends wouldn't. So I think it's important to figure out what's the point of the recommendation or the endorsement. And with that in mind, select the people to provide it.
This is Peggy. Just to add to that, so if your friend writes your recommendation, that's fine, but I wouldn't say I'm her friend, that's why I'm doing this. I would say, were you colleagues? Did you work on a project together? Were you, did you collaborate on a project, or, so talk about in what capacity you work to each other, or how they know you. Maybe you did something every week together, even socially, but what was it, and kind of what strengths did they see in you, or did you see in them if you're writing the recommendation? So, again, you're not saying my mother or my friend, you're saying, again, try to make it professional words.
Yeah, like for example, if you were to look at my LinkedIn, so there's a lot of back and forth endorsements, but I only have one recommendation because as a general rule, we kind of have a policy not to provide them because we're in the process of helping people of hiring decisions and things. So we generally don't do it as a policy as a firm. So, but I had a friend from my career and work counseling diploma program who was a new immigrant to Canada, and so was reestablishing her professional network and asked me for one, and I was happy to do it. We had been colleagues in our classes together at George Brown, and so I was able to contextualize it in that way. So even though we were fellow students, I could talk about like how she was what it was like to work with her, what I saw her doing, the challenges I saw her, overcoming.
Awesome. We've got a question from Peggy that's, what is Erica's opinion of following organizations you are interested in? And maybe another kind of add-on to that is, how does that contribute to your visibility to that organization or even that recruiter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I would guess if I were, trying to break into a particular organization, then I would certainly want to be following it because I'd want to see what are they posting, what's important to them, what's coming out of their PR team. Sure. Do I think it would get me hired above somebody else? Maybe not. I don't think it would make a particular difference.
Got you. That's a good answer. Definitely visibility, knowing what you're looking for and seeing what they post is also a great way to see if you're a good fit to that organization.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, if your logo is at the bottom and you're going and somebody from that organization is prepping to meet with you and have an interview with you, and they see, oh, their company's logo, you're following it. Well, then yes, of course, they can see that you're, maybe more in with 2 feet for their company. But that only really applies if you're not having a whole laundry list of a whole whackload of companies, right? You want to make sure that they're one of a few, and then they say, oh, I get it.
We've got a question from Derek. What would be some recommended steps for career networking? Should we pay attention
Come to the course in 2 to 3 weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, that's going to be our next step. So definitely pop in for our next one. Should we pay attention to make the outreach friendly and efficient? I think that's kind of a kind of good segue question about like LinkedIn messaging and once we connect moving forward.
Yeah, so there's going to be another talk, which will be on how to leverage your LinkedIn profile. But at a high level, what I would say about networking is the more precise you can be about the kinds of organizations you want to work for, the kinds of roles you want to do, the more able people are to help you. So if you say, have an information interview, or what we sometimes refer to as a courtesy interview with someone, whether that's by phone or virtually, or ideally when we're all back to quote unquote normal in person, those kinds of interactions, if you can say, I really would like to work for a company like, whether it's, if somebody wants to work in consumer products, right? So, I'd like to work, for a company like Coke, or I'd like to work for a company like P&G, or I'd like to work for a company. And so then they know, oh, okay, you want to work for a big branded company. All right, so I don't know anybody at Coke or P&G, but I know somebody who works at this, other large company that's like that, right? So they can steer you in their own network more efficiently than if you say, I'd like to work in, something related to marketing. Well, that could be any place, right? So the more you can be precise, the more helpful it will be to your people in your network.
I recommend, and then again, we'll be talking about this in a couple weeks, but try to find people that you have some connection with. That's why Earlham alums are a good one, because you can say, hey, I saw you went to Earlham, and I'd like to know more about you and what you do and how you got there. Particularly if you have any, interests in common, or, say you played a sport together, the same sport or something like that. And when we're talking about, we call them informational interviews or informationals at Microsoft, is what Danny says they call them, that you ask them at the end, is there someone else that I could talk to about this? So you're always broadening your network, and then you'll start getting people outside. And I think that's what Eric is talking about, warm contacts. I did see one of the questions about how many contacts people have. So connections are, yes, people that you have reached out to you, or you have reached out to on LinkedIn. You may not know them. Some of us have a lot of them, and we probably don't know a lot of them. But some you are. So first degree connections are your people you probably know better or quite well. So and that's what you're always trying to connect with people, so you can have that, and so you can start a conversation. And the conversation can be online, certainly these days. That I wouldn't stop or not do anything now if you can't have a face-to-face conversation. I tell my clients, set a goal, make one connection, or attempt to make at least one connection a day if you have time, or one a week if that's what you have time for, and just follow up with those people. Tell them, find out what they're doing, what's going on with their organization, their business, and this is a time everybody's may have some more time on their hands, but also that they're facing new and different challenges. So what's that about? So you're always learning and saying, that's something that's interesting to me. Could I talk to somebody else about that?
Yeah, and I would just, sorry, go ahead, Josie.
Oh, I just wanted to kind of follow up with the connections example. So kind of LinkedIn histories, they used to not have a 500 plus, you just had a number. But they changed it to 500 plus because they didn't want people to compete for a higher number. Erica, how relevant is that 500 plus to see on a student's profile, or just somebody you're recruiting? And Ebony said, would you advise against accepting connections from people you don't know? Maybe to boost the 500, or just to get to another connection that you're trying to get to, etc.
So I think for somebody just starting out, I don't think the 500 number is important. I think for somebody who's well advanced in their career, especially a career where they're having to deal with people, and I would be surprised if someone who was a senior executive of a certain vintage didn't surpass the 500 mark. But I think for somebody starting out, I don't think the number is important. I think what's really important is that you're connecting with, is having positive and constructive connections. And as for accepting from people that you don't know, there are different schools of thought on this. I tend not to accept from people that I don't know or don't have some sort of connection to. So in my role, for example, I'll get, somebody in Moscow who is in some field not related to mine. And I think this is not beneficial for either of us to have this connection, and I decline it. if somebody's in financial services in Toronto, which is where I work, and I've never met them and I don't know them, but I triangulate and I'm like, yeah, I know of this person, sure, I'll accept it. Or if I see that, oh, one of my colleagues in another office is connected to someone, I might accept it, even though I don't know them. But I'm thoughtful about the invitations that I get.
There is a button on LinkedIn that does say My Network at the top in the toolbar. And LinkedIn does recommend mutual connections of maybe places that we've worked or people that are second or third degree connections. And LinkedIn, when you look at somebody's profile and they have a 3 or a 2 next to it, it means that they, for example, the 2, that's a second connection. So they're connected to somebody you're connected to, but you're not directly connected to them, if
Right.
that makes sense. So it helps to get an idea, okay, who's my mutual connection? You can do research on the mutual connection if you don't know them super, super well, and then reach out with that mutual connection. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but I thought I'd just throw that out there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Josie.
Derek has a question. What kind of experience? I think we're just going to take one more and then wrap it up if that's okay with everybody else on the panel.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of experiences or achievements would most make a student's profile stand out to a recruiter, in your opinion, Erica, or Peggy or Danny?
Peggy, Danny, do you want to go first?
I missed the question. I'm reading the comments, so go on.
Danny, do you have any thoughts about what would make a student's profile stand out to you?
Sure. I mean, one of the things is particularly students in trying to get into technology is your skills, right? So making sure that not only do you say that you have a skill, but demonstrate where you've used it. And it's kind of tricky because you don't want your LinkedIn profile to be your resume, but talk about maybe some projects that you've been on, et cetera. My experience with students is just mentoring and helping and doing MBA hiring. So take this advice with, I'm not a professional, but something that can differentiate you in a manner that provides more depth and oomph to your LinkedIn profile would be good.
And I would really encourage you, Derek, to take a look at the pages on LinkedIn that are specifically devoted to the student audience, because there's a lot of information there. It's a real treasure trove, and I think you'll find some of the answers that you're looking for there. For myself, like Danny, I'm not working on hiring decisions related to students, so I wouldn't want to speculate.
Well, and in most of my roles, we would tell you to avoid recruiters if at all possible. Their job is to rule you out if possible. And so if a hiring manager says, I really like Derek and I want to, look at him more closely, again, if you have a connection with someone and they call their recruiter and say, send his resume, the recruiter will do that. So that's one of the powers of LinkedIn, is that you can start talking to people who are closer to the decision making, and whose job isn't necessarily to rule you out. So that's what we would tell you in every job I've ever had. I'm not a recruiter.
Awesome. I wanted to follow up with just one more personal question. We talked about Earlham alumni, and as a student, I've realized that there is a LinkedIn network that's open to alumni, but at the moment right now, it isn't necessarily open to students. It's used as a resource within the college. But something that I do advise is trying to find a group that alumni are working in, and then you can peruse within that closed group and kind of control F and look for somebody that has a similar job to you. to reach out and ask more questions with. But again, we'll cover that next step more in the next workshop. I just wanted to expand upon Earlham Connections. I had a personal text about that, so from a student here. So definitely tune in for the next session for that.
Can I add on to that, Josie?
Sure.
In order to be considered an alum of Earlham, you only have to have completed a semester. So that gives you rights to that LinkedIn group as we define alums. And so I would encourage each and every one of you to join that group, because technically if you've completed a semester, you're an alum. And that group was created by alumni and not by the college. So that is for the express purpose of the alumni, and you're an alum, so join it.
So, and it is what you request to join, and they make sure that you have an Earlham history, and then they let you in. My understanding, right, Danny?
I don't know what they've done to that from a governance perspective, but if there's issues, you're welcome to reach out to me directly.
Right. The other thing you can do on LinkedIn is search. You can search Earlham, and you'll get a list of people who have Earlham in some part of their background. So just FYI, I did that just the other day when I was sending these invitations out.
Hi, everyone. This is Caitlin Fleener, Director of Career Education at Earlham. And I just want to clarify that you all are correct that any current student of Earlham can request to join the Earlham Alumni Connections group, and we will go ahead and get you approved. So just as Peggy and Danny have said, it is open to current students and alumni. You don't necessarily have to have an Earlham degree, but you do have to have some Earlham experience, and we're pretty quick about getting that turned around.
So, that's your office. Great.
Yep.
Well, and if you have a lot of these questions too, certainly ask your career advisors or your career advisors. Is that what they're called, Caitlin? Because they know about this stuff too. I want to put a plug in for them.
Awesome. That's really cool. Everyone, all the students who are on this, I'm going to put that name in the chat, and I highly, highly recommend you plug into this group. It's really, really amazing. There's a lot of alums that really care about connecting with students, and they have a search capability, or they have a list of everybody that's in it, so you can peruse it. So stand by for a second while I get that.
And there's over 2,000 people in the LinkedIn alumni group.
I just wanted to ask if anybody had any parting words to say, and how to get access to this recording in the future for all the students that are here on this call. I don't know if we decided that yet. I just wanted to see if you guys, I'm going to be personally able to send out the link for students. So if you know anybody that missed this or wanted to be here, they can definitely message me or send me an email. And I'm going to put my email in as well.